Gardening can be deeply rewarding, and it can also get expensive if you are not careful. There are, however, a surprising number of unconventional but highly effective tricks that cut costs, save time, and often improve results. Over the next section, we will reveal 17 odd but useful gardening hacks that help you grow more for less. These are not complicated techniques or costly gadgets. They are simple, practical methods that use everyday items, natural processes, and a bit of creative thinking. You will hear hacks for turning kitchen scraps into rich compost, for keeping pests away with household ingredients, for saving rainwater, and for reusing materials instead of buying new. Each hack will explain what it is, why it works, how it saves you money, step-by-step instructions, and any cautions to watch for. Between the techniques, I will share short stories and common mistakes, so you can picture them in a small backyard or on a busy balcony. The goal is lasting resilience and real savings that anyone can achieve. We are ranking these hacks for maximum impact, starting with number 1. Which technique tops the list for sheer impact and simplicity? Let us get started. Kitchen scraps do not have to end up in the trash. They are the start of a powerful, money-saving fertilizer that almost any gardener can make at home. Collect fruit and vegetable peels, coffee grounds, and eggshells, and use them to build a hot compost pile. A hot compost pile transforms kitchen waste into rich, dark compost that feeds your soil and your plants. Here is why it works. Microbes, bacteria, and tiny soil organisms do the heavy lifting, breaking down soft food scraps when they have both food and air. The right balance matters. Mix greens, like food scraps and coffee grounds, with browns, such as dried leaves or shredded newspaper, aiming for about 3 parts browns to 1 part greens. A pile at least 3 feet on each side holds heat, and that heat lets microbes break materials down quickly. With a hot pile, decomposition can take as little as 2 to 6 weeks. Turning the pile every few days keeps oxygen flowing and speeds the process. Keep the pile consistently moist, not soggy. Finished compost feels crumbly and smells earthy. That is when you know it is ready. How this saves money is simple. Finished compost replaces expensive store-bought fertilizer and bagged soil amendments. It improves your soil structure and water retention, so plants are healthier and need fewer inputs. For many gardeners, the cost of fertilizer and soil amendments drops to nearly zero when they rely on steady composting. Practical steps you can use tomorrow. Choose a container, or build a simple bin from free pallets or a circle of wire mesh. Even small yards and patios can fit a compact bin. Collect kitchen scraps in a covered bucket and empty them into the pile regularly. Layer 3 parts browns to 1 part greens and add water until the pile is as damp as a wrung-out sponge. Turn the pile every 2 to 4 days with a pitchfork or shovel until it looks dark and crumbly, usually in 2 to 6 weeks for a hot pile. Safe practices and cautions. Do not add meat, dairy, or oily foods because those attract pests and slow the pile. Avoid adding diseased plants or weeds with ripe seed heads. If you have lots of citrus or onion scraps, add extra browns so acidity and moisture stay balanced. A quick example. Imagine a small backyard where someone keeps a covered 5-gallon bucket under the sink. Each day they add vegetable peels and coffee grounds. On weekends they add a layer of shredded newspaper and leaves, wet the pile, and give it a turn. Over a few months they replace a bag of fertilizer and a bag of potting soil with homemade compost, saving money and reducing waste. This kitchen scrap compost hack is low effort and high reward. It follows the old principle of waste not, want not. By turning scraps into soil, you close a loop, build soil health, and keep money in your pocket. Garden pests can wipe out a season's work, but there is a simple and low-cost way to fight back without buying costly chemicals. A homemade soap spray is easy to make and surprisingly effective. Mix 2 tablespoons of unscented liquid dish soap into 1 gallon of water. Put the mixture into a spray bottle, shake gently, and you have a solution that targets soft-bodied insects such as aphids and spider mites. The soap coats their bodies, it suffocates them on contact, and it can also break down the thin protective layer that helps them retain moisture. For best results, spray the solution in the evening when the sun is low. This helps prevent leaf burn and gives the spray time to work overnight. Always test on a single leaf first, wait 24 hours, and check for any spots or burns, because some plants can be sensitive. Use fresh batches whenever possible, and do not store diluted spray for long. Keep any leftover spray away from children and pets. This method works best for small outbreaks, and it is an affordable alternative to commercial pesticides that can leave residues on edible crops. A quick example. A backyard gardener with a small tomato patch noticed an aphid cluster, made a batch in a kitchen bucket, tested a leaf, and then treated the plants in the cool of the evening. The aphid numbers dropped, the harvest was saved, and no harsh chemicals were needed. For small-scale problems, a simple soap spray can save money while keeping your garden and your food safer. The only thing we promote on this channel is our own book, written from the way our grandparents actually lived. Before gardening became complicated, they grew food a little at a time, every day. For them, 30 minutes was enough. So that's why we turned that forgotten knowledge into the 30-minute-a-day garden, a practical guide based on what real families did to stay fed, resilient, and independent. Simply click the first link in the description, or if you're watching on TV, scan the QR code in the right corner, because once this knowledge is gone, it's gone for good. Packaging waste like cardboard boxes and old newspapers can do more than fill up recycling bins. Used the right way, these materials can save hours of weeding and cut herbicide costs to almost nothing. By laying sheets of cardboard or several layers of newspaper directly on bare soil, gardeners create a barrier that blocks sunlight and stops weeds from sprouting. The trick is to overlap the edges so no light slips through, and then soak the layers with water so they mold to the ground. Next, cover everything with 2 to 3 inches of mulch. Leaves, grass clippings, or wood chips work well, and the mulch protects the paper while giving a finished look. Over the growing season, the cardboard and paper slowly break down, adding organic matter to the soil below and improving structure and water retention. Be careful to remove any tape, staples, or glossy ink first, because those materials do not decompose safely. Avoid glossy or colored inserts from magazines for that reason. For a backyard example, imagine a small plot where a single delivery box is flattened and layered. A weekend of prep saves months of weeding, and what was once trash becomes a money-saving, soil-building resource. Rainwater is one of the best resources a gardener can tap into, and it is absolutely free when you set up a simple capture system. A basic rain barrel starts with a repurposed food-grade drum placed under a downspout. Drill a hole low on the side for a spigot, add an overflow outlet near the top, and secure a mesh screen over the opening to block leaves, debris, and mosquitoes. Each rainfall fills the barrel with soft, chlorine-free water that plants generally prefer. Rainwater also contains trace amounts of nitrogen, which helps fuel leafy growth. A single 55-gallon barrel can make a noticeable dent in water bills over the summer, especially in areas with regular storms. Before installing, check local rules and regulations. Some states limit collection to 2 110-gallon barrels per property, so it is wise to confirm what is allowed where you live. To keep water cleaner, install a first flush diverter that routes the dirtiest initial runoff away from the barrel. Set the barrel on a level, stable platform so you can gravity feed water through the spigot, and run an overflow hose away from foundations to avoid drainage problems. Keep the lid and screen in place to reduce algae and mosquito breeding, and clean the barrel out once or twice a year. Never connect a rain barrel directly to your household potable water supply, and treat water if you plan to drink it. A small backyard example makes this real. One gardener channeled her roof into 2 barrels, placed them on concrete blocks for easier access, and used a hand pump and watering can to irrigate containers and raised beds. Over a dry summer, she watched her municipal water use drop, and her tomatoes and herbs stayed healthy on the gentle, free irrigation. With a modest upfront effort and a few simple parts, rainwater collection helps gardens thrive on water that costs nothing, while reducing strain on municipal supplies. Starting seeds at home does not require fancy trays or expensive starter kits. Everyday items like toilet paper tubes and egg cartons work just as well, and they break down right in the soil, so there is no plastic waste and no transplant shock. Using simple household items is a surprisingly cost-effective way to begin plants. Here is a simple method to make a biodegradable pot from a toilet paper tube. Cut the tube in half, fold the bottom edges inward to close it. Set the tube upright in a shallow tray, fill it with a damp seed starting mix, plant 1 or 2 seeds per tube, and label the rows. Egg cartons work the same way, with each cell becoming its own tiny nursery. Why this works is straightforward. Cardboard and paper break down as soil microbes and moisture do their job, and young roots can push through the soft material. That natural breakdown reduces transplant shock because you can plant the whole tube or carton section directly in the garden, and the roots do not have to be disturbed. How it saves money is also simple. 1 packet of seeds can yield dozens of starts for just a couple dollars, compared to paying $2 or $3 per nursery seedling. If you start many vegetables from seed, those savings add up fast, Practical steps to follow. Use a light seed starting mix rather than heavy garden soil. Plant 1 or 2 seeds per cell to avoid crowding. Keep the soil moist but not soggy, and provide bright light in a sunny window or under grow lights. When seedlings are a few inches tall and have several true leaves, plant the entire tube or carton section into the garden and firm the soil around it. Cautions and tips to avoid problems. Do not overwater because wet cardboard can collapse and rot prematurely. Avoid glossy or heavily printed cartons and do not pack the mix too tightly. If you are starting large seeded crops, give them slightly bigger containers so roots have room. And if a seedling becomes root-bound, tease the roots gently before planting. A small backyard example often helps to picture this. A neighbor on a narrow city lot used egg cartons to start tomatoes and herbs on a windowsill, then planted whole sections into raised beds. The result was healthy, resilient plants and dozens of dollars saved over one season, with zero plastic left on the compost pile. This DIY approach is low cost, low waste, and surprisingly effective. It is one of those simple gardening tricks that works with the seasons and with basic biology, and it fits cleanly into a larger strategy of reusing and recycling to make gardening more affordable and sustainable. Free mulch is one of the simplest ways to stretch a garden budget while protecting soil and boosting plant health. Leaves raked in autumn, fresh grass clippings after mowing, or even straw from a neighbor's yard can all be layered over garden beds. This blanket slows evaporation, keeping soil cool and damp even through hot spells. Studies show mulching can cut water loss by 50 to 70%, depending on climate. Less watering means lower bills and less time spent dragging hoses. Mulch also blocks sunlight, stopping weeds before they start, and reducing the need for herbicides. For best results, spread 2 to 4 inches deep, keeping a small gap around stems to prevent rot. Top up the layer each season as it breaks down, and avoid using grass treated with herbicides on edible beds. With nothing more than yard waste and a bit of effort, mulch creates a healthy microclimate for roots and companion plants alike, all at zero cost. Certain plant pairings can do real wonders for a garden's health and a gardener's budget. This approach is called companion planting, and it means growing crops together so they help each other thrive without expensive fertilizers or pesticides. For example, plant beans near tomatoes. Beans are legumes whose roots host bacteria that pull nitrogen from the air and add it to the soil. Tomatoes nearby soak up that free nutrient and grow stronger without extra feed. Marigolds provide a different kind of help. Their roots release natural compounds that discourage soil pests like nematodes, pests that can damage vegetables from below. Lining beds with marigolds or tucking them between rows keeps those hidden threats in check and cuts down on chemical treatments. Mixing aromatic herbs such as basil or chives among vegetables can confuse insect pests and even enhance flavor in some crops. In small gardens and containers, these partnerships make the most of tight space and boost yields. Why this saves money, in plain terms. Companion planting reduces the need to buy fertilizer, it lowers the chance of pest outbreaks that require sprays, and it improves space efficiency so you harvest more from the same area. That means fewer trips to the garden center and more food from what you already have planted. Practical steps to try this at home. First, start small. Pick one bed or a few containers and choose easy combinations, such as beans with tomatoes, marigolds around a vegetable row, and basil with peppers. Second, plan spacing so each plant still gets enough room for roots and leaves. Third, observe and adjust. Note what works in your light and soil conditions and repeat the successful pairings next season. A quick micro story. A gardener with a tiny city backyard planted basil and marigolds among tomato pots. The tomatoes matured with fewer signs of insect damage, and the gardener skipped one expensive insect treatment that season. That small decision paid for itself in saved money and fresher tomatoes. Cautions and things to avoid. Do not crowd plants. Overcrowding invites disease and reduces yields. Be aware that some plants are incompatible or allelopathic and should not be forced together. Rotate crops each year to prevent soil-borne disease buildup, and always test new pairings on a small scale before applying them across the whole garden. With a little planning, companion planting creates a natural balance that saves money and supports healthy growth all season long. Another cost-saving trick is recycling old containers as planters. Old buckets, gutters, wooden crates, and sturdy food cans can be given a second life as homes for herbs, salad greens, and compact vegetables. This method is a practical way to create new growing space without buying pricey pots or raised beds, and it works for balconies, small yards, and window ledges. Cost-saving and space-efficient, this approach is surprisingly versatile. Why this works is simple. Plants need a container to hold soil, nutrients, and moisture. Any sturdy object that can be drained and lined will serve that purpose. Shallow containers are fine for shallow-rooted crops, while deeper vessels support larger plants. Thermal properties and material matter. Metal can heat up on sunny days and stress roots, while wood and fabric breathe and help regulate moisture better. Paying attention to these differences is how you avoid common problems and get consistently healthy plants. Drainage is the single most important factor to prevent root rot and wasted soil. Here are clear, practical steps to turn a found object into a productive planter. First, inspect and clean the item. Remove loose paint, labels, and any grime. If the container is very old, check for lead paint or chemical residues. When in doubt, do not use it for edible crops. Next, provide drainage by drilling or punching holes in the bottom. A series of small holes works better than one large hole. If you are using metal, line the inside with burlap, heavy fabric, or thick plastic to buffer roots from heat, but add small holes in the liner so water drains freely. For shallow receptacles like gutters or trays, fill them with a light, loose mix and grow leafy greens and radishes. For deeper containers such as crates and buckets, use a richer mix and plant tomatoes, peppers, or potatoes. Elevate containers slightly off the ground with bricks or pot feet to improve drainage and airflow. A few cautions will keep this hack safe and effective. Avoid containers that held toxic chemicals, strong cleaners, or fuel. Painted containers with flaking paint are risky for anything you intend to eat. Monitor watering closely because different materials alter how fast the soil dries. Metal and dark plastic may need more frequent watering in hot weather. Also avoid overcrowding roots by choosing a container size suited to the plant you want to grow. Imagine a small balcony where a gardener converts an old wooden crate into a compact tomato bed, and a length of salvaged gutter becomes a row of lettuce. With modest effort and a little creativity, nearly any sturdy container can become productive. This saves money on pots, reduces waste, and lets you experiment with layouts and crops without a big investment. Try it, adapt as you learn, and enjoy how recycling containers can turn everyday objects into free, useful planters that make your garden more resilient and affordable. Another cost-saving trick is regrowing vegetables from kitchen scraps. Some vegetables do not need seeds to start a new crop. All they need is a glass of water and a little patience. This method turns leftover produce into free, ongoing harvests that fit perfectly in a small kitchen or on a balcony. A simple example is green onions. After you slice the green tops for cooking, save the white root bases. Stand those roots upright in a jar with about an inch of water. Within days, fresh green shoots appear, ready for another round of harvest. Lettuce and celery work the same way. Set the base of a used head in shallow water and watch new leaves sprout from the center in about a week. Bok choy, leeks, and carrot tops for greens can all regrow with the same approach. For best results, change the water every couple of days and use clean, sharp cuts to reduce the chance of rot. Here is why this works. The leftover root base contains stored energy and growth nodes. Those parts have cells that can generate new shoots and roots when given moisture and light. In plain terms, the plant is already set up to keep living. By giving it water and a little time, you let nature finish the job. The money saving is obvious and powerful. Instead of throwing away usable parts and buying a new bunch every week, you stretch a single purchase into several harvests. That reduces grocery bills and cuts waste, so you get more food from what you already paid for. Follow these practical steps to get reliable results. Cut cleanly, leaving the root base intact. A sharp knife makes a cleaner cut and lowers the risk of rot. Stand the base upright in a shallow jar or bowl with about 1 inch of water. Place the jar where it gets bright, indirect light. Direct hot sun can stress the tender new growth. Change the water every 2 days to keep it fresh and prevent bacterial growth. When roots and new leaves are well established, transplant the plant into soil for faster, stronger growth. Harvest the new shoots as needed and leave the base to regrow again. Take a few cautions into account. Not every vegetable will give you more of the same crop. For example, carrot tops will produce tasty greens but will not grow a new carrot root. Avoid using produce that shows signs of disease, mold, or sliminess. If the original vegetable was heavily treated with pesticides, consider that when eating regrown leaves and wash them thoroughly. Also, keep jars clean and never let plants sit in foul-smelling water. If rot appears, start over with a fresh piece. Imagine a small balcony gardener who saves the white ends of half a dozen green onions each week. Over a month, they have continuous ribbons of scallion flavor for salads, soups, and tacos. It is like a tiny garden that keeps paying small dividends. Regrowing from kitchen scraps is one of the easiest, most satisfying ways to practice the waste, not want, not idea in a modern kitchen. It is low cost, low effort, and a surprising way to extend the life of ordinary grocery store produce. High summer sun can turn a thriving garden into a patch of wilted leaves in just a few hours. Fortunately, there is a simple fix that does not require buying shade cloth or expensive structures. Old bed sheets, lightweight curtains, or even a large umbrella can be repurposed into instant shade for tender crops during the hottest part of the day. Draping fabric over a quick frame of bamboo canes or tying it between stakes creates a canopy that can drop leaf temperatures by several degrees, helping plants conserve moisture and bounce back overnight. For vining crops like beans or cucumbers, train them up a lattice or trellis made from salvaged wood or string, and the plants will create their own living shade for roots and nearby vegetables. The key is to keep covers loose enough for air to move freely. Tight fabric can tear in wind or trap too much heat. Place shade just before midday and remove it in the evening to keep growth strong while cutting water needs. Here is a simple step-by-step method. First, select a lightweight fabric that lets some light through. Second, build a basic frame from bamboo canes, stakes, or branches pushed into the ground. Third, drape the fabric loosely over the frame and secure the corners with clothespins or ties. Fourth, check the setup on a breezy day to make sure the fabric does not flap violently. A quick caution: avoid heavy or dark fabric that holds heat, and do not cover plants tightly at night because trapped moisture can encourage disease. Imagine a small backyard gardener who drapes a sheet over a pair of poles during a heat wave. Their tomatoes look fresher the next morning, and they need to refill the watering can far less often. This is an easy, low-cost way to beat the heat and protect your harvest while saving time and water. Cut flowers do not have to wilt away in just a few days. Simple care steps can stretch the life of homegrown bouquets, making every stem count and reducing the need to buy replacements. The best time to harvest is early morning, when stems are full of water and less stressed by heat. Always use sharp, clean pruners and cut stems at a 45-degree angle. This opens up more surface area for water uptake and helps the flowers drink more easily. In a small backyard, these easy habits mean you do not have to buy new bouquets as often. Remove any leaves that would sit below the waterline because they encourage rot and bacterial growth. Change the vase water every 48 hours and recut stems a little each time to keep them fresh. For a simple homemade preservative, mix 1 teaspoon of sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of household bleach into 1 quart of water. The sugar feeds the blooms, and the tiny amount of bleach helps control bacteria. Avoid overdoing the bleach because too much can harm delicate petals. With these steps, even a few backyard flowers can last a week or more, saving money on every arrangement. Root-bound plants often struggle to thrive, but a simple trim can set them up for long-term success. This technique, called root pruning, means cutting away circling or tangled roots when you repot, especially for plants grown in containers such as vegetables, shrubs, or fruit trees. Why it works is straightforward. When roots circle or tangle, they keep sending energy outward instead of growing new lateral roots. Removing no more than 1/3 of the root mass at a time stimulates new lateral roots, which makes the plant sturdier and better able to absorb water and nutrients. You might be surprised to learn how much money this saves. Root pruning reduces transplant losses, keeps plants healthy longer in the same pot, and delays the need to buy larger containers or replacement plants. In other words, better root structure today means fewer expenses tomorrow. Here are clear, practical steps for doing it safely. First, choose the right time. Aim for late winter or early spring when most plants are still dormant. That gives roots time to recover before growth resumes. Gently remove the plant from its pot and brush or wash away excess soil so you can inspect the root ball. Look for circling or tightly packed roots and use sharp, sanitized pruners or a clean knife to remove up to 1/3 of the root mass. Do not take more than 1/3 in a single pruning. After trimming, tease out any remaining roots so they grow outward into the new soil. Repot into fresh potting mix, water thoroughly, and place the plant in partial shade for a week or two while it recovers. Timing and sanitation matter. Always use sharp tools and clean them between plants to avoid spreading disease. Avoid doing this during heat waves, and do not root prune newly planted or already stressed specimens because that increases the risk of dieback. A quick example: a balcony gardener trimmed the roots of a tomato plant at the end of winter, repotted it in the same container with refreshed soil, and got 2 more productive seasons without buying a larger pot. Small efforts like that add up across a season. With careful technique, root pruning builds stronger, more resilient plants and saves money by preventing unnecessary replacements and larger pots. It is a simple, low-cost practice that improves long-term garden health without extra supplies. Store-bought trellises can add up quickly, and for many gardeners that cost is real. Homemade versions, though, give you sturdy support for climbing crops at almost no cost. Bamboo poles, trimmed branches, salvaged fence posts, or even old broom handles can be lashed together to make simple structures that let beans, peas, and cucumbers climb all season. Here is a straightforward teepee method that many gardeners overlook, and it is both fast and effective. Gather 3 or 4 straight sticks about 6 feet long. Tie them together at the top with twine, rope, or garden string. Spread the legs evenly in the soil so the base forms a stable triangle. Wind extra twine in a spiral or make horizontal bands every foot or so for the vines to grab onto as they grow. For heavier crops like squash or winter gourds, an A-frame or hinged frame is a better choice because it gives more lateral support. Build 2 rectangular frames, lean them together at the top like an A, and hinge them with a length of wire or cord. Anchor the feet with stakes driven into the ground or with bricks and heavy stones so the structure cannot tip under a full crop load. Why this works is simple. Vertical support encourages plants to grow upward, which improves air circulation and light exposure, and that reduces disease and increases harvestable fruit. It also frees up ground space so you can plant more below. In short, better plant architecture leads to better yields and more efficient use of your garden. The savings add up. Using pruned branches from your yard cuts waste and can save $20 to $40 per structure compared to what you would pay at a garden center. Reusing found materials keeps costs down and often gives you a more custom fit for your space. A few cautions to keep in mind. Check that the wood or poles are strong enough to hold a full season of fruit. Avoid sharp edges that could cut tender stems, and if you are using old wood that might rot, consider treating it or replacing it each year. Be careful about wood from walnut trees because some species can release chemicals that stress garden plants. Imagine a small backyard where a single DIY trellis turns a crowded patch into a vertical feast. A simple bit of effort builds strong support, boosts yields, and frees up space for more food. These homemade trellises are a perfect example of practical, low-cost gardening that pays back in better harvests. Testing your soil's pH does not require a fancy kit. You only need a bottle of white vinegar and a box of baking soda from the kitchen. Start by scooping a few tablespoons of garden soil into a cup. Pour in half a cup of white vinegar. If you see fizzing and bubbles, the soil is alkaline, usually above pH 7. If nothing happens, mix fresh soil with water into a slurry, then add half a cup of baking soda. Fizzing now means the soil is acidic, below pH 6. No reaction at all suggests you are in the neutral range, which is ideal for most vegetables. This quick check can prevent wasted money on lime or sulfur amendments that might not be needed. It is important to remember this method only spots major pH swings. It will not give you an exact number. For new beds or stubborn plant problems, a lab test or a store-bought test kit is still the safest bet. Over-amending based on guesswork can do more harm than good. So use this as a first step, not the final word. Worm bins pack big value into small spaces, making them a favorite for apartment dwellers and balcony gardeners. A simple setup begins with 2 opaque plastic totes stacked together. Drill small holes along the sides and bottom for ventilation and drainage, then place the lower tote on a shallow tray to catch any liquid. Add a moist bedding of shredded newspaper or cardboard, aiming for a damp sponge feel, about 70 to 80% moisture. The bedding gives the worms a place to live and helps the scraps break down naturally. 1 pound of red wigglers can process up to 1/2 pound of kitchen scraps each day, steadily turning waste into rich castings. Over a month, expect 1/4 to 1/2 pound of finished worm compost for each pound of worms. Bury food scraps in pockets beneath the bedding to reduce fruit flies. If gnats become a problem, freeze the scraps first to kill eggs and larvae, then add them to the bin when they are thawed. Keep the bin indoors or in a sheltered spot so temperatures stay stable. A sudden cold or heat spike will slow the worms down or worse, kill them. Avoid adding large amounts of citrus, onions, meat, dairy, or greasy foods because they can harm the worms and attract pests. These simple cautions keep the bin healthy and odor-free. Finished castings can be harvested every few months. Use them directly in pots or garden beds as a rich homemade fertilizer that replaces store-bought fertilizers and saves money over time. Practical steps are simple. Choose 2 sturdy opaque totes. Drill holes for air and drainage. Prepare a moist bedding. Add red wigglers, feed in small buried pockets 1 or 2 times a week, monitor moisture, and harvest castings every few months. A small balcony gardener can keep food waste out of the trash and feed tomatoes with a steady supply of castings, cutting fertilizer costs and reducing waste all at once. Some gardeners swear by planting with the moon, following a tradition that stretches back centuries. The idea is simple and easy to try. Time your sowing and transplanting to the moon's phases, and you may see better results over a season. Many people prefer this method because it costs nothing and it adds a gentle rhythm to garden work. When the moon is waxing, that is, moving from new toward full, many gardeners choose to plant above-ground crops such as lettuce, beans, and tomatoes. The thinking is that a waxing moon seems to draw a little extra moisture upward in the soil, and that can help seeds sprout and stems put on strong growth. Conversely, during the waning moon, when the light is shrinking, gardeners traditionally focus on root crops like carrots and beets because energy is thought to be concentrated below the surface. The science on lunar planting is not settled, so treat this approach as a low-cost experiment, not a guarantee. Why try it, and how does it save money? The method itself is free, and if timing reduces early losses, you will save on seed and time. That means fewer wasted packets of seed, fewer replacement starts, and less need to buy extra fertilizer to rescue struggling plants. Used alongside sensible practices like checking frost dates and monitoring soil temperature, lunar timing can tip a borderline planting into a successful one, with no added expense. Here are simple steps to implement lunar planting in your garden. First, get a local lunar calendar or a garden diary that shows moon phases. Plan sowing for above-ground crops during the waxing period and schedule root crops for the waning period. Start small with a single bed or a few pots and keep a notebook. Record the moon phase, the planting date, the soil temperature, and how many seedlings emerge. Compare results across a season. Over time, you will know whether lunar timing helps your particular microclimate. A few cautions. Do not let the moon replace practical checks like soil warmth, moisture, and impending frosts. Weather, pests, and soil health matter far more than moonlight alone. Avoid rigid rules that stop you from planting when conditions are otherwise ideal. For a quick micro-story, imagine a neighbor with a small balcony who tried planting tomato seeds during one waxing period and saved a packet of seedlings that would otherwise have failed in cooler soil. That small success was enough to reinforce observation, and that is the point. Lunar planting is an inexpensive, low-risk way to add one more layer of observation to your garden, and that kind of curiosity often pays off. Transplanting young plants can make or break a garden success, so this final hack is about simple steps that reduce shock and protect everything you have already grown. Transplanting with care is not fancy, but it is powerful. Start with a process gardeners call hardening off. That means gradually exposing seedlings to outdoor conditions over 7 to 10 days. Begin by placing trays or pots outside for 1 hour or 2 in dappled shade, then add a little more sun and a little more wind each day. The logic is simple. Plants adjust their leaves and stems, they strengthen protective waxes, and their roots learn to cope with variable temperature and moisture. Gradual exposure reduces surprise stress, and that means fewer losses and fewer replacements. When the time comes to move a plant into the garden, choose a cool evening or a cloudy day to transplant, because lower light and lower temperatures reduce stress. For crops like tomatoes, try planting them deep, right up to the first set of leaves. Deep planting encourages more root growth along the buried stem, which leads to sturdier plants and higher yields. After setting each plant in its hole, water thoroughly to settle the soil around roots. Then add a layer of mulch to lock in moisture and keep temperature swings down. The first week after transplanting is critical. Keep the soil consistently damp but not waterlogged, and protect new transplants from harsh midday sun. Simple shade cloth or a temporary screen made from a light fabric or even a piece of scrap can prevent wilting on hot afternoons. Avoid moving seedlings during the heat of the day, because the combination of high temperature and direct sun can double losses. Also, do not overwater, because soggy soil can suffocate roots and invite disease. Here is a practical step-by-step you can use right away. First, harden off seedlings for 7 to 10 days. Second, choose a cool evening or cloudy day to transplant. Third, plant deeply for crops that tolerate it, water in well, and mulch. Finally, monitor soil moisture daily for the first week and provide temporary shade on hot afternoons. A quick backyard example. A gardener who used these steps turned fragile starters into strong tomato plants and saved the cost of buying new plants later in the season. These simple transplanting tricks protect your investment, increase survival rates, and ultimately save money by reducing replacements and improving yields. Treating seedlings gently and following a few straightforward steps sets every plant up for a strong start. Across all 17 hacks, one pattern emerges. The smartest gardens thrive on creativity, not cash. Old habits of waste become new sources of abundance, while simple science often outperforms expensive solutions. These methods are not just about saving money, they are about building resilience and independence. In the end, gardening rewards those who see value in every scrap, turning resourcefulness into harvest. Which hack surprised you most? Let us know in the comments.